you're sick and tired of hearing AI, and you're tired of the visuals with the robot, and we've done it too, right? We've had episodes where there's a robot overlooking a crystal ball, talking about the future of ERP partners. You had a robot hand shaking a human hand. All that white noise aside, because it just keeps ramping up, AI is a serious topic. And if you haven't dipped your toe in it yet, it is super easy to do it. It'll help build your confidence. You think we're full of shit? Stick around. Craig, we were pre-gaming about all these nefarious chats and bogus voicemails. Although the voicemail I got was still, "Hello, Tony Darden."
Right.
It didn't have that.
That was Bandhu in the trunk.
But that's coming. I mean, is AI being put to great use for us in productivity? It's also, there's two sides to every coin. It's going to be even more clever on the nefarious side of things.
It's what we've been doing, right? We've been helping people get to the next level, but now we got to protect the back end foundation here while we build the front end new cool stuff. So it's AI is on the back and front now. It's really strange that, I'm more of a go forward person, but man, we really have to keep the foundation secure as we build these new tools and make sure it's top of mind, because these AI tools are getting scary, sophisticated, and very, very tricky. And I know it's going to trip up a lot of people.
IT folks in general, but population in general are interested in AI and eager to see how the benefits how they will unfold. But for IT folks, it puts that spotlight back on our foundational layers. You said it, security, data. How about making sure that your data is clean? You think you have garbage in, garbage out at the volume that AI can process information and wants information. We talk about that accelerator effect, right? You want to accelerate good, not bad. So focusing on that back end is very important.
And using the tool sets that we have now. I mean, I know EDR is common, right? But now you got MDR, which is managed. Now, Microsoft's getting into it with AI on the back end, Copilot and security is what they're calling it, right? So the whole AI component of reading emails, trying to help us filter out the bad guys and bad actors is something that's just coming. We just got to make sure we're doing both. As much as we want to climb new mountains, we got to protect the foundation while we're climbing.
And so for those that are still hesitant to jump into AI, or there's still the stigma of, well, if I use AI or I use anything, I've now exposed my information to the outside world. My competition's going to see it, and we're handing the keys of the kingdom over. So there's two things there. What are your thoughts on both the stigma of exposing yourself to the outside world? Maybe we start with that, but then starting to talk about how we can start getting our feet wet and play with AI.
Well, we can't put our head in the sand on this one for sure. This is the equivalent of electricity to me, right? I mean, AI, internet was one thing. This is like going to be like electricity. It just going to be there. So I did a presentation and I talked about the stigma to C-suite, because I'm trying to talk to the whole C-suite, not just the CIOs, of saying they have to embrace this AI. Otherwise, what's going to happen is you're going to have BYO AI, and that's going to expose data into other large language models instead of a centralized one that's driven by the company. So the big thing here is C-suite and leaders, of the companies have to embrace this, and they got to get their mind around, okay, this is here. It's not going away. It's picking up speed. We got to make sure our data is secure, right? Because data is going to win this one, right? Clean data is going to win this race. But so right now, what I'm trying to recommend is just Microsoft. If it's in the Microsoft tenant, Copilot's good, right? There's a lot of good AI platforms out there, and I'm not dinging one or the other, but just for us to get started at least we know Microsoft's keeping our data in our tenant. So we can search web, or we can flip the switch to say, hey, look at our internal stuff. But what the danger is, some of these people are bringing their own in. They're plugging in, Fireflies or whatever into Teams meetings. And now your confidential discussions, meetings, and potentially information, if you're sharing it, is now in somebody else's large language model, because they're doing the AI interpretation and summaries. And it's powerful, but now they have sensitive information outside of your tenant, which is an issue. And I, some of the leaders were, I'm scared, blah, 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 but it's really, this is a cultural shift, and leaders need to capitalize on it. You really want C-suite to embrace and encourage, because what we don't want is the sneaky people bringing all these other ones in that's going to help them with their job and will make them more efficient, but there's some exposure there from a data standpoint.
Look at technology of the past, the race to get to a million users. I mean, you can see Facebook, and these other social media platforms, and then look at ChatGPT at the bottom there. That's insane. And this slide, by the way, is over a year old. So imagine what that would look like today. The adoption rate is amazing.
Yeah, then when you look at how smart it's getting from 3.5 to 4, passing the bar exam, passing the SAT, passing the CPA, all that, the rate at the increased intelligence of this system is crazy. Back to the C-suite adoption, what's happening, here's some interesting numbers. Like 50% of the people are afraid to admit they're using AI because they think their job's going to get displaced, right? And really, people that don't use AI are going to get replaced by people that know AI. We got to help people adopt this. And that's, if you didn't hear that, it's like, you're not going to get your job replaced. Your job's going to be replaced by somebody that knows AI, because 40% of the knowledge workers are going to get 30% more efficient. Now you have to be a manager, because now you're managing automation. And workers before, this is a whole new territory, right? Because us as workers, we did our work. Now we're kind of have to be a manager, a QC person of, hey, we're putting this automation in. I better make sure it works. But it's a way to elevate yourself too, right? It's the coder that can have AI comment the code, right? It's the CFO that can analyze the financials versus being worn out by getting the financials done. Those kind of things that's where we're going.
You mentioned QC, and that's where my head goes, especially for, now I'll devil's advocate you a little bit. Like if your team, if you have 5 content creators on your team, you're probably going to have 3
right
with AI, right? I do think there'll be some. Generally speaking, completely agree. AI helps facilitate your work, and it's not there to replace your job. But there will be some use cases of scale. On the coding, one thing I've always told my past teams is, and you said it, the QC element becomes really important, because if my code is broke, I can ask AI to fix it, and it does.
Ho, 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 it's magic, never believe it's not so.
And now all of a sudden my code works. But if I don't understand, I'm using quotes because it may technically work. You don't know if the exact outcome is precisely what you want, back to the QC. But let's say it is. I couldn't fix this. I'd ask AI. So now AI did the fix. I need to understand that fix, because as you keep compounding this, all of a sudden you've lost control of your application. It works, but now you're 100% reliant on AI to do anything going forward. So there's a balance there. You got to understand what's being done and review it thoroughly.
Right. Well, it's the logic, right? We need to make sure we understand the logic, because you're an architect now, right? So you're building it, you're letting it write code. You still got to put the bricks of code in place. So you're building this solid foundation, right? Because it could get out of control. When we've all done, code gets so out of control, you don't even know. You'd rather just rewrite it than try to figure it out. But
Yeah, if I get distracted and I'm back, I was a developer for many years, but even in the same day, like someone pulls me off to do something else, and now I come back to it. I'm like, where was I? Now I might waste an hour just trying to get back on that saddle again because of what I was working on.
The demanding of AI by new generation employees is high. They are like, they're going to expect that you have AI tools, right? They're just like growing up with the iPhone or mobile phone, right, and internet. It's just going to be a demand.
But back on the security part, just to reaffirm that Microsoft takes this very seriously. We're not on the Microsoft payroll, but we recognize the power of this ecosystem that they've built and how serious their investment dollars are. But they're also very serious about security. All right, so let's talk about a few ways to dip your toe and start to build that confidence. I'll start. I'll share. When we had our partner meeting earlier this year, we had ChatGPT up, and this could be the free version or the paid version. The paid version is $21, and you get the most current large language model. But we had up on the screen ChatGPT, and we're thinking about how to phrase something. Remember, we are coming up with our uniques for what VCIO Global offers to our to the public here, to our clients, our prospects. And we'd put a phrase, we'd type a phrase in, and then we'd let it come back with some suggestions, just some rewords. And we were playing ping pong with this. And so it was a really cool way to articulate a point that we were trying to make.
You got to start, right? You just got to start the journey. I'll help people download the Copilot app on their phone, right? It's free. You don't even have to worry about the $20 or whatever. And it's 4.0 ChatGPT. And yeah, there's some filtering. I test back and forth, but just start using it for every day instead of using Google. My challenge to them is don't go to Google, don't go to internet search, just go to Copilot first and start having this dialogue, because they got to learn that it's a dialogue. It's not a search, research, back and forth. It's a dialogue. Even Copilot today, I went in my wife's pantry, took a picture of the shelf and said, create a high protein dinner, read all the boxes, created instructions, gave me a dinner recipe, and how to make it, right? So even the visual side of things are built in, and that's the free version. It has to start at the top, right? Because they got to see that this is the direction, and you'll gain a lot of momentum. And you got to start having your cloud adoption strategy in place. And that's usually what I'm talking about now, because you need to have this stuff centralized for it to really work.
It's just so easy to get started with. So we definitely encourage you trying that out. But I also think about the C-suite, and let's start at the very top, the CEO. What's the most precious resource for them? Time, right? They have limited amounts of time, and attending meetings. So let's say you commit to Teams, and Microsoft Teams does a fantastic job of this. Turn on recording and transcription, hour-long Teams meeting. I don't know how many, if they miss a meeting, go back and watch that full hour, especially at the high level. But with that transcript button click turned on, it will send back the recording to you for that meeting and gives you a summary breakdown. Not only does it give you a summary breakdown of it's who said what. Craig talked about AI and the potential use cases within the organization, and he provided 3 examples. Boom, 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 right? It'll even give you the takeaways or the follow-ups. A meeting needs to be scheduled or was requested to be scheduled for next Thursday. Everyone's available according to their calendars. Shall I book this, right? It gives you that type of detail. Now, I've also gone back and watched the videos to make sure that the accuracy of the summary is there. And it is. I mean, it does a really good job. But think about how cool that is. If you're missing meetings or you just can't attend, it's a way to catch up quickly.
And the Teams with Copilot is the key. That's where you get all that additional functionality, right? But, so I was 5 minutes late to a meeting, and I popped open Copilot and I said, hey, catch me up. And it said, here's 5 things you need to know. and I'm right back in the meeting. No one has to catch me up. The other thing is post meeting, like you said, it does all the recaps, the to-do action items, but you can ask it questions about the meeting. Like, what did Tony say about this client? It'll automatically give me the bullet points.
Staying with the Teams meeting, it gives you that user sentiment. I thought was fluff until I put it to use. And we've all been in meetings where we know there could be bones of contention or some tough personalities. It helps draw out and allows me to go right to that part of the meeting just to see, okay, how was this flowing? Because it could be a coachable moment as leader to see what's going on, or it may draw your attention. Hey, we got a lot more here that we got to dig into. So,
And it doesn't cost $1 million to do, right?
yep. And also here's another use case. Again, very simple to use. Highly encourage you to try it just to see the power of it. And that's summarizing your emails. How many times have you been pulled into a string? See scroll length. Hey, can you weigh in on this, please? Blah, blah, blah. Joe is not doing blah, blah, blah. I can ask Copilot to summarize this email thread, and it'll give me a very succinct breakdown. And now I have the big picture, and I can have granular detail there too, right?
Yep.
Or how many times you've tried searching for an email and you can't find it? I still, it's a head scratcher. The base Outlook product, I try to find an email and it just doesn't work well. I go to my Teams page and I can search, hey, looking for an email from, our CEO back in June, pick your blah, blah, blah filters on that. And it searches your entire environment and serves up that information for you. Wow, 3 emails and one was had an attached PDF, and here it is. I mean, it just little things like that where could be a time sucker, a point of frustration, and it simplifies it for you, all within the same interface that you're using to manage your day.
Yeah, this sounds like a Microsoft commercial, but it's not. I mean, 80% world's on Microsoft, right? So we're just trying to let people enable some of these tools. I mean, on the email front, even if you're on vacation, you come back, you can tell it, give me the top 10 hot emails I need to respond. It'll look at due dates that were mentioned, sentiment factor, and say, you better respond to these 10 first. So that would be hard. That's just time. Because when you see it in action, like Excel, creating formulas for you, those, creating graphs, it just, not that you can't do it. It just, instead of taking 20 minutes to get it done, it's 1 minute, right? So graph this, give me a trend line, give me this, look for anomalies in this data set.
Creating a PowerPoint. You have pages of notes that you have to create a deck over. Ask Copilot, hey, I need a presentation. And you can tell it if it's, if there's a theme to it, you want to have it be, technology-based theme or modern architecture-based theme. I mean, play with it, to your point. And it'll take all those notes that you've created and serve up a PowerPoint deck. It's something to start with. We're not saying that what is created you roll with, but back to that time savings. If you're in the middle of an acquisition or you have all this collateral of information that you have to break down and summarize to help you move the ball forward, you can take 1,000-page and across multiple documents and ask Copilot to break it down for you to help, again, get some of that time back.
Boy, your tune has changed in 2 years, Tony. You were from the first.
It has. I poke fun out of it. It's like cloud is cheap. All these infomercials. Cloud is cheap. Bullshit. I'd rant about it. But,
yep.
But having been exposed to AI now,
you just got to be smart about the Azure services. So much of it is included in our licensing, though, and that's what a lot of people. If you have to fire up Azure servers, you just got to be watchful of runtime and all that other stuff. That's just something you got to. It's a new, again, electricity, right? It's a new utility meter you got to monitor, and you got to set up smart, right? And you got to use it to your advantage. But to your point, the benefits far outweigh any kind of cost now, right? I mean, it's the time, and quality of life. I mean, part of the presentation is keeping human in AI, right? And making sure people have, the tools that they need and want to do their job, because they don't want to do mundane tasks anymore. Not when they know it can be automated. That's when we're going to have turnover, which costs companies money. So, I mean, it's like giving them a new tool bag. Here's your laptop and here's your AI tool. Now do your job.
In our episode on the future of ERP partners, that's another group that we need to help coach along. Microsoft is building in a lot of self-implementation tools and making companies, businesses be more self-sufficient. And the longer the partners resist and still want to make sure they have their hands in every activity, I think the greater danger they're going to be in. We have to embrace this idea of self-enabling companies to manage the systems themselves. There will always be a need for a partner. I'm not saying there won't be, but we have to embrace that businesses are becoming more self-sufficient.
Well, it has to be this true, and I'm glad that we're here, because even when we stick on the ERP partners, we have to get back to true consultative partners, right? I mean, we got into this phase of they were implementers. They did the standard implementation checklist. They listened to you a little bit, maybe did some gap analysis, but not thinking bigger picture, right? So just had it happen against my recommendation. One of my clients implemented Business Central with another partner that I didn't recommend. Sure enough, they sent out the B team that were just doers. They weren't listeners. They didn't help consult. So we ended up having to switch, but all they did was check boxes instead of listen and do process improvement and use the new tool sets, stuff that you have to be on the edge. Now, that's the challenge for the new partners, right? But that's their job, is to make sure they're bringing the latest, and I'm a kind of a research I love learning. So I'm always on the edge, and this stuff they used to call what, bleeding edge. It's not bleeding edge anymore. It's here. When they release it, it's here to use.
Well, the last Business Central release, I think they introduced 45 new Copilot features. For example, I'm looking for customers that haven't bought within 6 months, but were over X percent, last year. Pick your example. It serves up that information. Whereas before it would be a report request to a partner and the doers take action. It's just going to keep getting better. And I like what you said about getting partners back to being true consultants. One thing I look for in partners is, are they equipped? Is their staff a bunch of techies that are learning business, or a bunch of former business people that are learning the tech side? There's a big difference between the two. And
are they just so narrow focused? Who's covering blind spots? That's where I love working with you, Tony. I mean, when we go into clients, we get to talk to multiple partners, right, on behalf of the customer, right? So otherwise they're getting, it's the MSP that says, we do Meraki. I'm like, well, what about Ubiquity? We could save 50 grand, Meraki backbone, Ubiquity here, and blah, blah, blah. Just thinking outside the box on what's the best. And I guess we're going into this new era now of, before you were scared to say, does this make sense to you? Because you were supposed to know it all. It's like, no, you got to have that psychological safety in your environment, in your team, to say, I think this is the way we should go, or I feel this is the way we should go. And let people poke holes in it, and be okay with people poking holes in your stuff, because that's what you want. You want healthy tension, healthy dialogue, and healthy teams.
And that's the power of the personality assessments and the working genius assessment. So you want to know the personalities around you. You want to know what it would be the best team makeup.
And one of our clients just asked us to do it for their executive team. And, because we're on their executive team, we talk about how we're building the IT team out. And they're like, shoot, we should do this across our executive team and our direct reports. I'm like, okay, we'll do that. And then you team map them. Then we're talking about working genius here, but it's the stickiest assessment that helps companies work together with the human factor. It's like, I like to invent, I like to cheerlead just like you. Who gets things over the finish line? People are calling out meetings now. We need the TEs to come in, because these are people that get it over the finish line. Or we need ideas. We're just doing the same thing. We need some wonders and inventors to come in and just think of new ways to do things. We need a WI meeting. So calling out meetings with personalities in building a healthy team on skills and letters, I think is going to help a lot with this AI journey we're on.
What about the mindset of disparate ERPs? So if you're an organization that's acquiring 1 to 2 businesses each year, there's a substantial cost, relatively speaking, to onboard them onto your platform. And if you acquired a company that's buttoned up and their systems are working well for them, but they're on-prem systems, right? And it's another unique system compared to what you've been trying to roll out globally. I've heard both. There's 2 sides of that coin, right? Well, there's companies that run disparate ERP systems and they're fine and they're very successful and there's nothing wrong with that. And then there's the other side of the coin. Okay, well, this is a new age, and getting information in the cloud and leveraging AI for those productivity gains and analytics, forward thinking. Yes, they might be buttoned up and the system's running okay, but we're missing the boat. Getting them on, it doesn't even have to be the same ERP, but a modern ERP. I lean that way. Like, I don't care that if the system's running well. And no, I'm not pissing away money and disrupting the business. What I'm telling you is the future of where we're going requires that you're on modern ERP, specifically ones that the mothership is running. I think you get the best benefit there. Where are you at with that?
Well, since we get pulled into business strategy also, not just tech strategy, it depends on what's on the plate, right? So where my head is, you got to lay out the roadmap. I agree. If the foundation's set, and at least if, like, in that case, say they have Microsoft as the back end tools, but they have an ERP system that's just outside of Microsoft, whatever it is, get level set so you have at least a standard of communication. And stage 1 could be that you just mine that and get it into the ecosystem of Microsoft. So then you can take advantage of AI. If you have time, you have resources, and it's not going to impact the bottom line, convert them and get it centralized. Because the more centralized the data is, it starts working for you. So, and that's just the way it's going to be. We want data to work for us. And if you hear anything else, prepping for this whole AI journey, which is happening fast, and by 2030, it's going to be super disruptive. You got to have a centralized data model. Worst case, you're pulling it out, putting it into a data warehouse in the ecosystem, so it's getting indexed, so AI can take advantage of it. But the easier future cost of ownership consideration, I would centralize as much as I can.
And I'm not suggesting that you rip and replace day one. Of course, the math has to make sense, but the math will make sense at some point. So whether that's 4 years from now or 4 months from now, you want to be thinking about that, because I'm with you. Like, data extraction, getting it into a model that you can harness and use that information, that's a one-way street. That gives you information. Now, what do you do with that information? You got to ingest it back into 4 different systems to be put to good use. So there will always be deficiencies on some level until you can harmonize.
The vision I see happening too, we got to play the data and AI game and be ready like 2 years, right? This is where the competitive divide of AI is going to happen, right? So either you're going to be there and then you're going to jam with AI and you're going to be able to smoke your competitors, right? Because then as IT leaders, as executive leaders, not even IT, then all we do is rinse and repeat of power automation, right? Automate BPO, business process automation with power platform, right? What are we doing manually? And then do a reverse time study. Okay, this takes this department 80 hours to do a week. Automate. 80 hours and something back. You do that department by department. You keep going around. And now you got your SOPs are all automated. They're enforced. Then you get to the next layer of you got dashboards. And then you start asking people, what are you looking for in that dashboard? And then now with Power BI and Power Automate, if they tell you what they're looking for, you could say, how about I just alert you when that happens? And then you got that automation loop. And that's like, what else do you need to run this business better? Because then you really get into optimizing business, right? Because this is saying, okay, if you're spending 10 hours looking for this trend, why don't I just tell you that, give you 10 hours back? And then now what are you going to work on? Now, how are you going to make this more competitive? Now, are you going to strategic advantage, right? All that stuff, that's where we're going, but it has to have that data layer clean.
And get drunk on data. And if something is outputting information, collect it, grab it. It will be put to use. That use might not be relevant or you don't have that epiphany moment yet, but you will. And I know, and for back to the cloud skeptics which I was one, storing that information up there costs money. I tip my hat to Microsoft and the different storage tiers that they are offering businesses, to which I would say, if you can collect it, do it, because it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. When you put that information to use, these are the conversations that you have back to your business process optimization and reporting. But I promise you, if you're collecting everything you can and you're collecting it at the lowest possible level, think of like your invoice, like an invoice, the sky is the limit. So now you have dashboards that give you that boardroom level view, and then you can start to drill down and get to the minute details that you want. But it all starts with that data. If you can collect it, do it.
Building out your app team, Power Platform, Power BI, analytics, all that stuff. Because data scientists, yes, now AI can do a lot of that. But it's like the whole app layer, and then you go BI, AI. That's how you're going to help executives and companies move forward and be more profitable and competitive.
And if you're not doing about it or thinking about it, I promise you your competition is. Because at some point, everything we're talking about will just become table stakes and assumed across all organizations. So now is the time. I guarantee you there are things that in your environment that you are not aware of that you have. So get with your partner and help understand that, because there's some things that you could be taking advantage of right now.
But that was perfect.
That's the way you do it. That's the way you debate.
I just got a voicemail right before you signed on. It was from Walmart, and it's my $919 headset purchase has gone through, and to call them to arrange pickup, blah blah blah. I'm like, this is still a thing. I mean, what the And the volume is picked up. Like, I'm getting texts about, your UPS package isn't delivered can't be delivered until you verify. I'm like, The examples we brought forth was simply having a conversation, and it stacks. It's like iterative. Did I say that right?
Yep.
Yeah. But
Have you ever heard the way the Persians used to make decisions about getting drunk?
what?
No, so I thought it was Romans. So what they would do, and I used Copilot to validate this because somebody told me this. The Persians would executive whatever teams back then, they'd make a decision and then they'd get drunk and validate the decision. And if it was a good idea, if they still agreed while they were drunk, then they went with it. And then they did it reverse too. Sometimes they would make decisions when they were drunk or after drinking. And then when they were sober, it was still a good decision and they agreed with it, they would put it forward. But if any of those didn't agree with, they didn't do it. That's how they validated decision making.
I think we need to pull the team together. I want to call a vote.
So that was a total sidebar.
You got some